Welcome to the Ashtanga Dispatch podcast. I'm Mulqueen, your host. This lifelong journey of knowing ourselves and embracing our own uniqueness is what Carl Jung calls the process of individuation. As in yoga, it's kaivalya we're going for, the freedom to be our true self. However, I don't need to tell you, this is no easy task. I mean, there are a whole lot of forces out there that we have to first free ourselves from, including our own need for acceptance. Because at some point, we all have to make a break from the pack. And that's something that most of us are reluctant to do, as it's the group that makes us feel safe. Now, a feeling of belonging is important. But what happens when that belonging doesn't allow for differences or disagreement? What if conformity is the only way in? There's this phenomenon called groupthink, where people in a group only think as a group. It's how cults are able to thrive. But also politics, where thinking is only done along party lines. Here's the thing, we're all susceptible, especially when we're part of a group that makes sameness part of the deal, which is something Ashtanga Yoga is kind of prone to do. And we call it tradition, which of course sounds much better than groupthink. But when that tradition doesn't allow for individual expression and change, then that's exactly what it becomes. Anyway, that's why I was keen to put together this episode of the podcast and invite a few of the teachers who I think operate outside of the box, so to speak. Harmony Slater, David Garrigues, and Ty Landrum. Let's begin with Harmony. As one of the very few certified mothers in Ashtanga Yoga, Harmony's always been a pioneer. But these days, it's less through the physicality Ashtanga is most known for, and that she was most known for herself. Today, Harmony emphasizes the need for a softer approach, for less doing, for maybe no doing at all, which in a way is almost the antithesis of what most of us think Ashtanga Yoga to be. It's the feminine energy Harmony now brings, a side of our practice that often gets neglected and sometimes forgotten completely. Now, David, I've known the longest, and I think he'd agree with me saying he's always been a bit out there. David was using chairs in yoga way before chairs became cool. But it's not just his use of blocks and props that makes him different. One of the things I love most about David is that he simply can't help but be himself, even when that sets him apart. And that, as you'll hear him say, is sometimes kind of lonely. David is a true artist. He's a poet, and he is most definitely a mystic. For him, all forms, including asana, is a spiritual experience and expression. Now, before I introduce Ty, I want to point early what will become abundantly clear in listening to the podcast. Harmony and David come from nearly opposite approaches when it comes to practice. And so in the beginning of the conversation, which Ty mostly misses due to technical difficulties, the thing almost turns into a debate. Then about 40 minutes in, here comes Ty with, I think, what I hoped would be a middle way, but that wasn't really a middle way at all, but like a whole nother direction. Unsurprising, I guess, from someone with a PhD in philosophy to go ahead and rethink the whole method. I recently launched Black Lotus Yoga, a really well thought out system of postures he practices and now shares with students in the Mysore style. Now, spoiler alert. In the end, and in part, weirdly, thanks to the color black, all three do come together. And I mean like amazingly together, and each in their own unique way. But please, please do me a favor, listen to the end. If you drop off in the middle, or you don't get all the way through, you're honestly going to miss the best part, this unexpected, more tender bit that comes at the end. That's when we're reminded that while the journey may be solo, we needn't do it alone. Here's Harmony, David, and Ty talking about what it means to be yourself.
Hi, Harmony, David. I am so glad that you are here with me right now in all different places, all different times. Thank you. Thank you for making it work.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
I'm also glad to be with you all.
So, interestingly enough, the theme of this podcast, and I didn't ask you, was sort of outside the box, right? Talking about being slightly unconventional. But I never asked you, do you consider yourself unconventional? I mean, does that fit for you? I mean, Megan and I had come up with the three of you and very easily and separately came up with the same list, the same three people. But I didn't ask you. Is that something that feels like it fits?
Oh, yeah.
And David and I were talking before you all got in, and I said, David, I think you might be the most conventional, actually.
Oh, the most conventional?
The most. Yeah, no, I think you're actually the most. You thought I said the opposite. Unconventional. Mm-mm.
No. I thought you said confessional.
Confessional.
Yeah.
Okay, that puts a whole nother spin to this podcast.
Oh my gosh. Oh, so you said I'm the most conventional?
I did.
Oh, wow. Are you serious?
You didn't see that coming, huh?
I did not see that coming. No.
I want to hear more about this confessional part.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
Well, I did make a confession to him. I said, when there was a time when I encouraged, all right, I was pushy, actually, maybe. I wanted him to be more conventional. Isn't that funny? Like, there was a time where I was like, I want you to be more conventional. And David, I hope you don't mind me saying, he resisted, like, fully. And in not so many words, probably told me that was me, my stuff, wanting that conventionality to fit. But I think that's why I had you come on, because you resisted me in that. And I admired that, because I think that's what we give into, right? The conformity, the being like everyone else, and it makes us feel accepted and validated. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you feel is unconventional or conventional.
Wait, are you asking me questions? Well, I think what I was thinking of conventional and unconventional, it's a good question. Let's throw out one, like in conventional Ashtanga, which we know is changing and isn't, but it's that idea that you don't use props, you don't switch around, you don't really modify. And there are certainly even more, they can be very rigid in some respects. And not a lot of room if we're talking about like the strictest, most rigid idea of conventionality. No room for creativity or individuality, not for students, but also not for teachers, for you to have your own voice. I don't know. I think that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's there's definitely maybe a spectrum of sort of, those who are trying to follow or align their teachings or mimic their teachings after maybe how it's taught at 4 a.m. in Mysore, India, or was taught at 4 a.m. in Mysore, India. And then, all the way down to, I don't know what the least conventional person would be, but.
David, what do you think about conventionality and unconventional? What would you consider yourself as, and why?
Well, yeah. So I definitely consider myself unconventional and Because, well, a lot of reasons, but because the whole way that I teach Ashtanga is almost it doesn't it uses the basic structure of the like what happens at 4 a.m. in Mysore, and people doing the series in order, every vinyasa, 6 days a week, and without and you just try your best to do the hardest version of the pose that you can, and then there's and it goes further than that. There like and like there's signs on the wall saying silence, like so you don't talk, and not only do you not talk, there's no time when you talk. So there's no time when you like talk about skeletal alignment or asana actions or you breaking down poses. And me, all of that, that to me, that's what I call, that's for conventionally, that's the end of the tradition. That's the whole package right there. And for me, that's the beginning. That's the opening. That's your foundation where you start from, which I love. I think, and that's where maybe you think I'm conventional or something, is because I'll never, at least I'm 63 now, and I don't see myself deviating from that or not loving the structure of Ashtanga, but then from there it becomes this very open-ended exploration, which involves verbalizing the practice, verbalizing what happens in every transition, what happens in all the poses, and then breaking things into manageable steps. Because I don't, the whole idea of do your practice and all is coming, that does not, I don't subscribe to that. I don't think it's an effective way to, I don't think it's an effective way to learn. And I think it disrespects your body and leads to harm over time. And so I've spent like now it's decades really working with uh, using steps and modifications and props and customizing the sequences for individual people. And I've even gone so far now is I'm coming out with a new video course that's called the Ashtanga Revolution. And so it's like I'm leaning into the unconventionality of how I teach, but you're right in the sense that I'm not out like I love the structure of Ashtanga. I just don't think that the way that it gets interpreted, kind of from the top and going out, it's just not. It's not doing what I say is not doing service to the genius of the system, like the structure of it. So anyway,
I
yeah.
love that. And when you talked about like the way you teach and using props and doing the hardest version and having workshops and teaching the individual student in whatever way that means and being creative in adapting it to them. I feel like what you're describing has become more of the norm now. And
Mhm.
I just feel like you're like the trailblazer. I mean, you were doing it before it was cool. Before
Yeah,
when people
right.
knocked it, you know what I mean? Like you were doing it
Yeah.
before it was. Now it's kind of like cool, and it's neat.
Mhm.
And that's why I said you're sort of the most conventional because you're actually you're actually only you were doing it way before it became
Right.
a thing.
Uh-huh.
What do you think, Harmony?
It sounded like he took the conventional Ashtanga yoga and rather than becoming unconventional, he became more conventional and then everyone else is following along. You
Um,
like
So
unconventionally became more conventional somehow.
so we're conforming to David now.
I don't know. I'm not, but
How are you teaching? I feel like that, and that was one of the reasons why I asked you to come on, because I feel like yours has really been a more recent journey. Like you've really, your voice has really kind of changed. I feel like your approach has changed. I don't know how you would describe it, but it's kind of
Yeah.
fun. It's been fun to watch.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with David in that prioritizing the practitioner over the form of the practice is absolutely essential. And I think that kind of gets missed sometimes in the in sort of the coherence of trying to remain consistent to the form. And and that can go in different ways. I think I think bringing a more feminine approach to the practice has been something I've been focused on more, which allows for the structure to become a little bit more flexible and less rigid, and tuning in and really listening to the body more, and the energy and the subtle energy and the movement of the subtle energy in the body when you're practicing becomes more important for me as a teacher to facilitate for the practitioner, which really I feel like requires a lot of softening, a lot of listening, deep listening to yourself, a lot of maybe not finding answers, but asking questions and exploring and experimenting and making that okay, making that normal, actually, to explore and experiment with your own body, your own practice, whatever that looks like, every day on any given day. And rather than trying to force yourself to do the same thing, or to make it harder and harder every day, or to always be at 100%, it's like, what happens if you just do 5%? What happens if you don't practice? What comes up then? Because sometimes that can be the deepest aspect of the practice, is this addiction to doing. What happens if you stop that addiction to doing and you stop identifying your self-worth with the physicality of the practice or the achievements of the practice, which for me is really reinforcing a lot of the patterns that our society already, creates and that we buy into. So what happens if you start to unhook yourself from these aspects of achievement or accomplishing or doing or success, and start looking at what comes up when you're not achieving, what comes up when you're just sitting with yourself, when you're just being rather than doing. And all of this is very subtle, and it can be done in many different ways, of course, which is maybe where I'm a little more unconventional, in that I don't really feel like Ashtanga is the only practice that we need to be doing as spiritual beings having a human experience. It's helpful, and it's helpful to have a structure. And as a new practitioner, it's maybe invaluable to have a structure. You need a structure. You need to learn through a system, through a structure. Otherwise, it's not really a practice. It's not really understanding how to kind of enter. It's like that Bruce Lee quote, enter form, exit form. But once you have the form and you have the structure, then, it's sort of like a circle. We don't have the discipline or the form. We enter into the discipline and the form, but then at a certain point, we become so attached to the discipline and the form that itself becomes an obstacle to our evolution, to our growth. And so then we have to start to question and look at and explore, where is that attachment residing within ourselves and within our physical practice, or even, it could be meditation. It could be whatever practice we're attached to. It shows up all the time, right? Because as humans, we're very sticky, and we start attaching our value and our self-worth on whatever it is we're doing. And then we start creating hierarchy. And for me, that's the antithesis of what, having a spiritual practice of any sort is. It's not about putting yourself in a hierarchy or trying to achieve something so that you can become better, better, better. It's actually recognizing that who you truly are, which is like, you're already a divine being. It's about really awakening that spark within yourself and having so much radical love and compassion for the experience of being human, that you no longer have to compare yourself in that way with other people, even to your past self or your future self. So I guess
How do you
that's
run a
how.
mice? So then, like, how do you run a mice? Like, do you
I mean,
teach
in the
Mysore?
Mysore room, in the Mysore room, I still teach the Mysore. I still teach you need a structure, right? That's the whole thing, is you need to enter through a structure. So I still teach in a way where you come in, you do sun salutations, you go through the sequence, you get it. I give adjustments. I don't do a lot of talking. It's mostly done in silence, because for me, I love that way of teaching and practicing. Silence is so transformative, something that I think we don't give ourselves enough of these days, and that we really crave. And that spiritual practice, you can't listen if there's not silence, right? You can't hear yourself. You can't hear the intuition. You can't hear the divine when you're not tapped into the silence. Even if there's noise, you need to still be able to connect to the silence. But it's the room doesn't look super untraditional, actually. But when I work with students one-on-one within the room, there's always a sense, I think, it's more of the quality that I bring, which is, I'm not coming into the room to like challenge you to do more or to do it better. I mean, I might. It depends on the situation, right? Maybe that's what you need. Maybe you're like really needing that kind of like challenge. But you might be someone who's in there just like, really going for it. And then you're going to get a little different approach. Like, just soften. It's just about holding a space for me, really. And the space is really one where you can question, where, if someone goes to the left or does the left side first instead of the right side, I'm not going to call them out and be like, you have to change sides, do the right side first, do it again. Like, it's a different approach, right? It's like, oh, what's happening here? Oh, you're doing the left side? Oh, interesting. Don't forget the right side.
All right, maybe you might be the most conventional then.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's if people want to use props, they can use props. If people like, it becomes more of a conversation and a relationship, I think, in the room than a dictatorship. That's really what I'm interested in fostering, is really empowering the student to take control of their own practice.
Well, I'm going to embarrass, and I agree with you. I'm going to embarrass David, maybe or not. I don't know. But your name was brought up in a previous podcast. Jen Renee was talking about when she got hurt. And this goes back to what Harmony was just saying about individualizing and doing it different. Like, it might look the same on the outside for everybody. Like, it might look the same, but it's not when you start to sit down with people. And she talked about, and I just thought it was brilliant. She said she was hurt and she'd signed up to go with you for a week. And she thought, what the hell am I doing? I can't go. My practice sucks. My body hurts. I can't do it. And do you remember this story? And she wrote you and she said, I don't know what to do. And you wrote back and you said, what postures can you do? Look at all the series, look at everything. And what are the ones you can? And just do those. And she was talking about how surprised she was that there were still so many that were possible, and that you switched the focus from everything she couldn't do to everything she could. But that would be unconventional, because it is skipping and going out of order. It's out of our idea of what conventional is. I think that's changing, but I thought that was a really unique approach. Do you remember that?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah,
No,
because it was you. It was you.
I said that to her? Oh, no, I don't. I don't remember that, but I say that often, actually, exactly. I'm sorry. I didn't understand you were talking to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. What can you do? And literally go right down the list and find out. And it's amazing, because that's power, right? And like for instance, I have a student who had to get a shoulder surgery, and she's 6 weeks with her arm in a sling at her waist, and she's practicing. And whereas and she knows how to practice, but, even though she can't put any weight on her arms, and but there's so much you can do, um, and this is the thing that you you there's just uh, so much good technology there within Hatha yoga itself, but then Ashtanga represents Hatha yoga so well. It's such a beautiful template for that technology. And then once you learn it, once you know that structure, then you can adapt it, or like use it in your own way to do what you need to do, and still have that practice. And so, yeah, I know I know exactly when you were talking about with Jen. Exactly. Yes. And, yeah. So,
They say for artists, you learn the technique, but then at a certain point you have to let go of the technique. Artists do. So they get tutored and taught technique, and then there comes a point when you have to let go of technique, or you stay stuck as an artist.
right. But you see, this is where I'm little not, so to me, it's not see, because it's, it's more about, having so much technique that you can apply it to any circumstance. It's not that you have to let go of it. In fact, it's so ingrained in you that it just comes out of you to meet the circumstance, whether and like, a severe limitation is one instance, but it also could be things like Harmony's getting at, that are like just where you are in your life and what's going on with you internally and emotionally, or just what's happening in the greater spheres of your life. And but you're still, to me, that's what's amazing, is you're still coming kind of home to this base that for it, like Hatha yoga. That's and I feel like it is one of the ways that I am unconventional. It's actually is just how much uh, how no much just how much I love it. And like I have no problem at all being attached to it. It's, to me, this is a wonderful attachment that I have no aspiration to drop at all. Like my backyard, that is my sanctuary. And I, I thrive on going out there and doing my yoga. And it is true that I'm not there trying to achieve like difficult poses or difficult goals or things, but I am trying to I'll tell you what it really is for me. Anyway, and I, so that it's prayer. But I'll tell you what prayer, like I've been reading this book. I just have to find it to tell you the exact title, but it's really good. It's by this pastor, and it's about prayer. So, oh no, it's called The Healing Path of Prayer. And what I love about it is he says that, like, he puts it, because prayer, it often can feel like, he calls it like you're begging basically for something. You're begging for this change or this healing or that, and this is not the spirit of it at all. And it has to do with kind of what Harmony was saying about listening. Okay, so, and it's really about um, communion. It's like getting quiet enough and present enough where you don't ask for anything, actually. You ask to be open to the divine spirit that's there, everywhere through in life, and that's creating everything, and that's your guide, and your ally, and your best friend, and your protector, and so that's why, I mean, and yeah, I guess I'm attached to like going out there and having that experience, like a lot, and um, and and so and a lot, and there is technique involved in that. There's like breathing and postures and bandhas and like Ashtanga. It gives you that technique, and then it also, like Jen Renee, it gives you know you can do it in the most limited way and still get that prayer, that sense of communion, right? So
I love how the two of you describe the same experience in really diverse ways, right? Like
yeah,
Harmony, you were like coming in at it from a stillness, softness place. And David, you're coming at it, you're in your backyard, in the middle of winter, doing, doing the form. And yet
like
you
with
both
my hat and my
with your
overcoat, my mittens in the freezing cold, like, yeah,
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 definitely extreme. But you both actually made it. What's interesting to me listening to you both is you came to the same place. You
yeah,
started at different places and actually came right to the same place.
yeah,
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I just feel that like the yoga asana is one way, but there's also meditation, super powerful. There's also pranayama, very powerful. There's also chanting. There's also spinal energetics. There's
Okay, can you
also
tell me about
ecstatic
spinal
dance.
energetics? Come
There's
on, Harmony.
also,
Come on.
you know,
David, have you seen?
there's all kinds of ways to have like a very deep transformative experience and connect to your inner energy and that innate wisdom.
So, since you brought it up, so David, Harmony is introducing other things. I think you're doing this in your retreats too, right? Like you're offering retreats. You're doing Mysore style, so it's very structured, obviously, and
Yeah.
then
I mean, if you're
I
going to
see.
practice in a Mysore, if you're going to practice yoga, I think for me, I feel Mysore is always like the best way to practice because it allows for all those things that David's talking about and that you've been talking about too. You get to adapt the asana practice for the individual practitioner. And I don't know any other kind of class that you could actually do that work in. Like, it's not possible in a lead class, really. It's very difficult to lead a whole group of people, but also work individually with everyone, which you can do like to a very small extent. But especially if you're counting people and you can't really, you got to manage all the things. So Mysore is unique that way. It's really, really efficient and helpful. But yeah, I like to bring in all of these different ways because they all offer a very different, not even different, but they offer a different path, maybe a different gateway, a different entry point into experiencing your inner self, into that aspect of prayer, even into that deep listening, and to access yourself from these different points is like a more holistic kind of experience, I would say.
Well, I will say, it being in
and
David's, you were the first person who brought chanting in to a class. Like you were the first person who introduced that, the first person who introduced pranayama. So like you actually, outside of the Mysore room, definitely introduced other practices within that. I just want
Yeah,
to, yeah.
definitely. I know David does. But
no, but it's funny because but I see what you mean now. I find the light bulb came on about me being conventional, right? Because it is true that I stay pretty centered in the hatha yoga, like, and yeah, and that's just it, and it's just that's interesting to me, right? Like, and so But but certainly pranayama and chanting, those well, chanting actually no. I'll say that no, but this is even conventional. I feel like because like I really rely on the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Like I love this text and I use it all the time. And one of its ways of the language it uses is the Hatha versus Raja Yoga. And so Raja Yoga is more meditation and stillness, and I would include like chanting as headed more towards the Raja Yoga side of things, but I definitely go there, but it's still within this sort of world of Hatha Yoga that I live, and yeah. So
Harmony and I had a similar conversation on her podcast, didn't we? I mean, it was like, and I was probably saying the same things that you are. Like I wouldn't say like I'm a little attached. Yeah, I do like I do like the form. I like practice. I feel like I come into myself in that way, in the movement. You know, obviously I keep a seated practice as well, but definitely I see it as a form of prayer. I see it very devotionally, but I just like the experience of being in my body.
yeah,
And I'm learning as the years go by to love all the experiences of being in my body. I didn't always love all the experiences. I wanted them to be a certain experience. I mean, maybe that's age, maybe that's process. I don't know. But now I figure every day I can get up and move. You know, it's a good day. Like,
yeah, yeah.
right?
But I'm curious, like meditation is also experiencing being in your body. That's not an experience of being in your body. It's actually incredibly embodied. I would say it's even more embodied than asana because you're going into the subtle energy, into the subtle experience of your body. And so it's so intimate. It's so juicy. Whereas asana, you're moving all the time. And so it's hard to really be in your body. You're using your body to have an experience, but to go in and be in that inner energy, to like really be embodied, requires actually taking the mind in and sitting with that subtle energy to feel your body from the inside out. And that's
I think I'm
incredibly
doing that in
powerful.
asana. I know. I mean, I agree with you. I think meditation is powerful. I'll let David speak to it. 'Cause he probably does it better than I do. But I think meditation is a powerful practice. But I do actually feel myself inside out when I'm in an asana. I mean, maybe
You do. But it's also using your body like a tool rather than letting your body tell you how it wants to move or how it needs to move or where it needs to release. It's just like there's just like this little tweak, and it's fine. Both are fine. Neither is better than the other. I'm just saying they're both embodied experiences. But one is like using our bodies to get something out of ourselves to
No, no.
create a certain experience, and the other one is more allowing the body to just be without trying to change it, without
You
trying to
know,
move it.
I'm not there on that. I don't. I feel like uh, that's. I don't know. I feel like that might be your experience, but that is not everybody's experience necessarily. Like that, because it's really there's not you don't have to be being in an asana doesn't mean you're trying to get something out of it. No way. That
No, but you're trying to change something about yourself.
no,
No?
not at all.
Okay.
No, not at all. No.
Ty, you just popped in at a very opportune time. And can I just say,
It's on now?
yes,
Now it's yeah, it's loud.
I'm
You're
so
all-
sorry. Am I super loud again?
Yeah.
yeah, we're pretty, Yeah, I'm just lowering you just a little. It's okay.
Oh,
I gotcha. I gotcha.
yes.
No, I think you're good. Do I recap what we were just talking about? Because it was such a
No,
great
no, no. Just
conversation.
keep
No?
going. It sounded awesome. It was awesome. Whatever was happening, keep going. And forgive me if I fall out again. I was saying I don't know the internet connection here. I'm in the UK somewhere, and I think it's like a Starlink thing.
Do you know?
But please, please. It was super interesting what I heard when I came in.
No, and I just wanted to say thing, and I'm not actually even. It's not at Harmony. It's a general statement, which is, see, here's the thing. It's the asana versus meditation question, right? And here's what this is the only part I don't like about it. Okay, is that the meditation people, they have to say that asana is not meditation, or that it's not good enough, or that meditation gives you something better or more. And I just don't think we need that. Why do we need to say that? Why not? It really isn't like that. It's like, because I'm over here enjoying my asana, and I'm not telling you that you as a meditator need to do asana because it's a different experience and it's subtly better or it's this or that. No, I'm not. I'm saying, fine, meditate, enjoy, sit, but don't tell me that I am doing something wrong or bad, or I'm not getting there to the eighth limb or something. I just don't. I'm not there. It's just like, um, yeah, and what, I'm sorry, just one last thing I'll say about that, which is what's amazing to me is that it's a classic thing to do, like through a history, to basically denigrate asana and physical yoga. Like you'll find it from every corner. That's what's amazing. You're like your parents, you're like, then now, it's always surprising where it'll come from. Like actual asana teachers do it. They like put down asana while they're teaching asana. That's what they do. And then now it's in the exercise world. Now they tell you yoga's no good for you. The asanas don't strengthen you. And so it's like this. It's like, oh, here's the next angle. And it's one of the funny things. That's how I consider myself unconventional. It's like, I don't buy any of that. I'm sorry. It's like, I'm not, yeah, I'm sorry. It's just, because what one thing is I'm still in my asana, but even that is not, I don't care. It doesn't even, I just don't, I don't want to tell someone how to meditate. I want to experience it for myself and then be left to my peace doing that. And that's basically it.
So you're saying that you're finding meditation within your asana as
I'm,
far as your experience.
yeah, I've, yes, I'm saying that. And I'm saying that I don't even want to say for someone else what meditation is. I don't like I can't, and I don't want someone to say that or put a limit on it. It's just not, I don't, like, and I've done a considerable amount of Vipassana meditations, seated meditations. So it's not like I'm coming from nowhere in it. But um, yeah, it's just, I'm not, this is what I say. I'm a lover of asana, and I will. I think it'll go all the way to the grave with me.
Ty, you have anything to add to that?
I love hearing David say that he's a lover of asana.
Thank you, Ty.
Yeah. I mean, I think I am too. Hmm. But yeah, I don't know. I find the conversation about like the relationship between asana and meditation kind of puzzling. Um, I like to sit every morning. I just enjoy that very much. I make a point of it, just sitting in the dark quietly. Um, I feel that the term meditation is so fraught, so loaded, that I wouldn't necessarily describe myself as meditating or say that I'm not meditating, but I just really like to sit quietly in the dark. I love that. Yeah. And it does something for me that's different from what the asana does for me. But it's just different. And I'm just grateful that I have the luxury of doing both of those things every day because I love both of them so much. Yeah. But yeah, to say more, I feel like I would have to get traction somehow. Um,
There are different access points. That's what I was saying, is that there are different access points to an inner experience um, that are both really important and valuable. And I think you learn something different, or you're able to connect in a slightly different way to that innate energy, to that inner consciousness.
yeah.
Um, they they have a different quality, a different experiential reality that you're sort of entering into.
And I will say, I think in Ashtanga, if I'm not, I feel like I remember people saying asana is meditation, and almost like you don't need to sit, right? Because you're getting it all in the asana practice. And I like the
People say
contrast.
that,
Yeah,
but
they
I
do
don't
say
think
that,
that
don't
it's
they?
true.
Yeah, and like, I think it's a way because people who are generally attracted to Ashtanga are movers, and
Yeah,
we like
they
to, and I
like to
do.
exercise.
Well, I mean, I like to move and be in my body, but I'm like Ty. I think I also, and like David, and I know David does too. I like to sit as well. I like the contrast of the two. I don't think one is better than the other. I think it's an and, not an or to me. But I think there was a time when people would say, no, you don't have, no seated, don't do anything else but your asana practice. It's all right there. And I don't think that that's a fair assessment either. I think you miss an access point, like you said, Harmony. You're avoiding something then. If you only
Right.
do and never not do, then there's
Right. But
avoidance.
hold on. I'm sorry. I'm going to
Okay.
add this in there, which is like, I'll just give you an example of, so like the whole, well, I don't even know what if it's yoga or what, but there's this sort of handstand craze where people are making entire careers out of teaching handstand, right? And meanwhile, in Ashtanga, the finishing postures are almost forgotten. Like people barely do headstand, barely do shoulder stand, and you see, this is like these are the bridge poses. This is like um, so partly what when you say like people like to exercise, yeah, and move, but this isn't even hatha yoga. Like it's gotten away from its it's at like it says right at the beginning of that. You use hatha yoga to climb up to the high pinnacled Raja yoga, and but you have to do poses where you stay. You can't do like handstands where like and there's those some of them are very strong. They can hold a handstand for a good long time, but you can't substitute headstand. Like headstand, now that's a pose. I remember in Mysore way back, there was one Indian student. He would stay in headstand for a half an hour. Like and so there's there's much more possibility of stillness and not moving, not having ambition, not really doing basically whatever meditation is, right? And so what? You're standing on your head instead of sitting cross-legged. It's not. It doesn't necessarily make and it's it yeah it's it and um I'm just putting it out there that there's Mm, does it, and it was a little bit what Ty said. Does it really need such a hard, fast line here that meditation is this one thing over here and asana is another over there, and it might be that what, because Harmony's definitely saying that this is a different thing. It's just to sit and do nothing, and that it's none of it matters. Your posture, or it's this internal experience that you're going for, that somehow asana just invites you, or almost demands that you go out of that to make the form or whatever it is of because headstand does take more body activation than just sitting. But
It's
anyway,
not that the posture doesn't matter. I mean, one is an inside out and the other is an outside in. That's all I'm saying.
I do appreciate in what David is saying the idea that asana gets sold short, usually when it's compared to meditation. That usually the comparison is somewhat divisive, and the image of asana that's assumed in that comparison is usually pretty superficial. So I do for sure think that that in the way that we learn to hold a balance of drawing in and releasing out, a balance of being receptive and being stable at the same time in asana, that can reiterate reflect into a very subtle level, right? And if it does, then the mental state that one's sustaining in the practice of asana becomes at least very, very close to, and not fundamentally different from, at least what I find myself able to experiment with and being still. And so I think they come very close to each other if the asana is approached in that way. And then the distinction doesn't seem like, I kind of lose the sense of the distinction, or I can't really quite connect with the idea of one being inside out and the other being outside in. I'm not really, I don't really have a handle on that.
What I think I'm saying by that is, one, you have the structure. So you're creating a form with your body. Your body's on the outside in order to move the mind in so that you can experience that one-pointed concentration. Yeah? So like you're saying, you're doing a challenging posture, say, or something, holding for a long time, as David says. You're creating a certain structure with your body on the outside that then requires, it's quite a masculine approach, so I'm not surprised that you both like it, that you hold the posture, or you use the body in a way where you're exerting control, because it requires a great amount of control, to then draw the mind to one pointed focus. And then you can move into that inner state where you're experiencing the movement of subtle energy. The other one is not exerting that control over the body. The other one is that receptivity, that softening, that being with the body just as it is, and letting the mind drop into the body to just notice, what is that subtle energy doing, without having to exert a form or control. And so the body then might actually move, which is like what, when I'm practicing spinal energetics or facilitating it for people, it's what actually happens. You enter into a deep inner connection, a deep meditative state where you're really feeling and listening to this subtle energy, and the body you feel the inner current of consciousness. And the body actually then moves, but it's from the inside out. It's not because you're making it move. It's the body's actually moving itself because you're tuned in to the inner current. And so I mean, it's super subtle, but that's sort of how I'm describing an outside in versus an inside out.
I can appreciate the distinction as described. Absolutely. I just don't see that they both can't apply to asana. You know, that you could have that more masculine control-based approach or this more receptive inside-out approach.
I think
Still in
maybe they
asana.
can.
I think it's
with the,
I think it's
yeah,
rather rare, to be fair. It's
yeah,
rather rare that somebody gets to that point in their asana practice.
yeah, yeah.
And yet,
I mean,
and
it's
yet,
true. And yet, no, it's true. In spinal energetics, at a certain level, you are doing like back bends. I've done Kapotasana. I've done different
Mhm,
asanas in this
mhm,
type of practice, but it's a
mhm,
spontaneous
mhm,
arising of the posture rather
mhm.
than a like, do this, do this, do this, do this, do
Sure,
this,
sure,
and like
sure.
a forcing of your body through a series of postures.
You
Mhm.
know, isn't there I can't recite Yoga Sutras right off the top of my head, but Stira Sukham Asana, but it's the ones after that. The one after that,
Prayatna Saitulya
Shaitulyananta Samapatibhyam.
and then the
Ananta
one after that.
Dvandva
Dvandvana Vigata.
Abhigata.
Oh, you guys are good. Okay, I'm going to do it in English. Isn't it? When we allow for that softening, then when we come to that balanced place, that we're no
I
longer
know, but
disturbed by the
no,
opposites. No?
I'm sorry, but this gets into it because that word prayatna shaitilya, that gets there's more than one interpretation of it almost always gets interpreted as a relaxation of effort, except for that is not the only definition. Okay, and one of the definitions is significantly different, which is um, great. It's to stop being so cautious. It's not about relaxing effort. It's relaxing. It's stopping to be so careful. Okay, which is a completely different flavor to the thing. And
I've never heard that translation, David.
that, you look it up, and it's right there in the dictionary.
I've
It's
heard
right there.
reducing restlessness.
What?
Reducing restlessness.
Nope. Great caution is the word, and letting go of great caution. So and care. So because you see what we do is we get so careful, get so timid, and so afraid to do it wrong, or and then we right, but that spoils it. It's
That's
like
exhausting.
yeah, but you see it so much in practice. People be and it's funny because I like I put this is probably a bad analogy, I know, but I still do put it here. It's like we know like fast, reckless drivers are bad. Okay, it's like this is not good, and just like over exertion in yoga poses and like pushing too hard, that's bad, no doubt. Okay, but when a bad driver that's like driving all cautious and slow and like putting the blinker and going, that is dangerous too. And right, that's not just a inconvenience. That's a bad thing. Okay,
I
and this
knew.
is
I was like, he's going to make fun of my mom driving. I knew. I was like, I could hear it coming.
okay, and so this anyway. So I'm sorry. It's just so funny to me because I mean, I don't know.
I was legit trying to come to the middle way. So and I totally hear what you're saying. And it's exhausting having to hold on and do everything that way. And
Yeah,
I could see that as a form of doing, like that is a form of rigidity and a form of there'd be a softening and letting go of those, that's a very small idea of what something should be. And where I was
right.
going with it is I can understand I'm sort of like finding where Harmony has come to this, and it sort of has an about face to it, and that's one of the reasons. I mean, you were, certified female Ashtanga yoga teacher, very physically. I mean, I've seen your practice. It's like, very, very strong, and you have now kind of done this big 180. And I was going to say, in the Ashtanga yoga practice in particular, there is it can be a very masculine approach, and for very many years it has taken that. I think it is softening now. I think there is that softening that's occurring now that's allowing for it, but I can understand why you would go from one extreme to the other. That's how you can that's another way of finding balance. Is I went from here because Harmony was with you, and then is now here on the opposite, and somehow I think I'm bringing in Ty now, is where it can somehow mingle its way and I think the softening part of the Yoga Sutra, if I can go back to that interpretation, it's just a little one, but that's often the part that is missing from us, from just us, and not just Ashtangis, but just us in general. Like we're very focused on the efforting, and often much less focused on the softening, and so often that is the part that kind of brings us to the place where we're no longer then bothered by. Then we find that middle place that Ty was saying, that can it find its way, there where we have that experience, and from either point.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's ultimately the yoga, right? That's the union of the opposites, that middle path. It all comes down to that. Maybe it all gets tied up in the Black Lotus.
What did you say?
Yeah, what's up with the Black Lotus, Ty? Come on.
What's up with it? Well, where to begin? I mean, let me see if I can make it continuous with what we're talking about. I really liked what David was just saying about this idea of like letting go of this sort of this tight, self-conscious, this kind of assessing self-consciousness. Like I'm always worried about whether I'm doing it right. I'm always imagining, as I practice yoga, I'm imagining what I look like from the outside because some esteemed teacher is walking around and they're assessing me. And so I want to make sure that if I do it, that the way that I'm practicing is going to conform with their expectations. And, and I mean, and I can just see from the looks on all your faces that you'll be in agreement with me that this is awful. This is totally anathema to yoga. This is like, I mean, that's the kind of consciousness that public education installs into you, and yoga's supposed to help you, disabuse yourself of all of that, right? And yet, in sort of conventional Ashtanga, it seems just to be ever encouraged, and you even hear people talking about the magic of doing yoga under the watchful eye of so and so, and the way that it makes you focus, and then confusing that with some kind of meditative, something or other. And it's just an intensification of your self-consciousness, and that could only be good for you if maybe it brought it to such a crescendo that it all just shattered and broke apart, but that doesn't really seem to happen too often. So, I think that like finding your way out of that, being able to just sort of like use the yoga to feel into the body, to be more receptive, to bring a greater quality of listening, and to be able to explore the yoga and to play with it, and to connect with subtler currents and try to give those expression and movement. I mean, these are the things that seem essential to me, and and presumably to you too. So I find that the place that Ashtanga has, like what's become of it in the last decade or so, it's gotten brittle. And often as an Ashtanga teacher, I find it difficult to, to invite people out, to step out of that consciousness and still be doing Ashtanga, you know? So with myself, I found myself at a certain point, but actually during the lockdown summer, like in 2020, I just suddenly found myself like just kind of spontaneously doing a different practice. I was just moving, breathing. I don't know where it came from. I was just doing something else, and it felt amazing, and it was strong, and it was revitalizing. And I just stayed with that, and then a bunch of patterns developed that I kept going back to, and then a good year and a half passed, and I realized that I'd hardly touched Ashtanga since then, but I was doing this other thing, and I was like hadn't felt so good in my body ever, and so then when everything started going back into motion, and I started, being invited to teach Ashtanga again, it felt like a little bit of a misfit. Like, well, gosh, I'm not actually doing that so much anymore. So I started sharing with some other people, like, closer students and stuff, some of the things that I was doing, these sequences. Was like, try that. I was like, maybe if I'll write a few of these things down and share it with people and see how it goes. And they loved it. And, and so then it quickly turned into a thing. Yeah. And so so I rethought some of the dimensions of the, like I thought about the way that Ashtanga can sort of shut people down when they get to different sort of physical challenges that their bodies just aren't up for. And then the way that they don't really get much else to experiment with. Maybe they don't even get to really explore backbending much, or maybe they don't get to explore arm balancing, or maybe they don't get to go deeper into certain forms because they can't do this or that. Or maybe they like putting the leg behind the head is just not what their hips want to do, or half lotus, not what their knees want to do, or reaching the arm behind the head, not what the shoulders want to do, or something like that. And so I took these patterns, that had inspired me, and I thought about ways of kind of adapting them for people in those different situations, and then came up with a structure of 6 sequences, all of which I can actually do, and then a way of rewriting them so that you could do all 6, even if putting the leg behind your head was not happening in this life. Or you could do all 6 even if going into lotus just wasn't a good idea for you. Or you could do all 6 even if you couldn't reach behind your head and catch your foot. Because maybe you've got a deep back bend, but that's just not good for your shoulder, that kind of thing. And so I came up with a system that has 6 sequences, but 3 variants of each one. And then called it Black Lotus Yoga, and there it is. And now I'm teaching that.
Amazing. Why Black Lotus?
Why the name? I mean, for one, I can answer that question in different ways, but, and some of them would take more time than you're probably interested in. But the short answer is just that it was personally meaningful to me, that it was an image that came to me a lot when I was sitting. And it has a deeper significance, which I could get into, but not sure if that's terribly interesting in the
Wait,
moment.
Ty, you guys. So I'm sorry. Can I just tell you?
Yeah, do
Um,
it.
yeah. So I've been I've sort of, it's this confessional. I've sort of jumped on board the manifestation train. Like I got this manifestation book, and I really like it, and it's really parallel to what yoga tells you. Like Sat Chit Ananda. That's what you are. You're bliss, right? And your abundance. And so like, and one of the ways I'm unconventional is as I keep these journals, and I draw in them. And so like there, I'm amazed how obsessed with the manifestation people are with light. Like the body is light, the spirit is light, and everything is light and bliss. And and this book I told you earlier, the healing path of prayer, the same thing. He just goes for the light. And so I made this drawing. It's like let me see, get that in there. So it's
That's
I am
nice.
light. I am eternal, infinite, eternal light, right? But notice in the background the
It's
black.
black.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's black. And then hold on, I'm not done yet. So then, and well,
I
that's
want a poster of that.
my biggest problem with the manifestation thing. It's like, but what about the dark?
Mm,
And
mm,
and I feel like a rebel. And so I made this picture, and
mm.
if you can see,
Beautiful.
it's like
Hmm.
like a million dots, and it's crazy. And I wrote this about it. Okay, here it is. This is the rebellion in me, right? This is why I'm on. You invited me, Peg. I wrote, here it is. I love black. No amount of reaching for or loving light will change that. So all color emerges from and returns to black. And black is my refuge, my rest, my still point. Black is space, forgiveness, companionship. Black always shows up and comes to the rescue. So when I play with light, black is always there to catch me, to fall back upon, to erase scores of color disasters. Black, black. Sweet, forgiving, spacious, open, all receiving black.
It's beautiful. Black is also the womb space.
Yeah.
It's the earth space too. It's the essence of all creation. It's so juicy and warm and fertile.
I love Black Lotus. That's good, man.
Thank you, David.
Tell
Thank
us
you.
about your mystical meaning. We want to hear more about the mystical meaning of the blackness now that David
Yeah,
shared
okay.
his mystical manifestation. And Peg, it turned out to be a confessional after all.
I mean, we're talking about conformism, right? We're talking about we've been talking about unconventionality, right? And
Yes,
of
and
course, the
confessions.
conventional is often, I mean, the attraction to the conventional is a kind of conformism. If attraction to the conventional is for what? To reassure yourself that you belong, to try and give yourself a feeling of kind of slotting in or being worthy or having a place when you feel like you don't have one, right? And in this day and age, people struggle with that, presumably, perhaps. I mean, so it seems, with a sort of epidemic of depression and so forth, that people struggle with feelings of worthiness and a sense of belonging now more than ever, right? And at the same time, it seems like, conformism in some of its worst kinds is again on the rise. and it's always been, there's that conformist strain in yoga, and I would say especially in Ashtanga, it's really strong. It's really strong. And I don't think it's inherent to it, by the way. I do want to say, because I remember David was one of my first teachers. Like, he inspired me into Ashtanga in a big way. And I remember one of the things that I heard him say in the very first encounter that I ever had with him was, he said, if you want to be a yogi, uh, you have to be a maverick. You have to be a vigilante. You have to be ready to go at it on your own, you know? And that was, I mean, that was like formative to my understanding of yoga from the beginning. And I thought, yeah, all right. Okay. That sounds, sign me up. So,
That's
you know, but I think, so if you're, so like we all need to have a feeling of belonging and of knowing our worth, right? And I think when we're very, very young, our mothers give us that. Hopefully, if we have loving mothers, if there's that unconditional love coming from our mothers to us, it gives us a sense of belonging and of worth that, nourishes us at a very deep psychological level. And then when we come into adulthood, we have to somehow wean ourselves off of that dependency from our mothers and find our sense of worth and belonging in some other way, in a way that's not dependent on that, right? Now, I think that probably spirituality and religion has served this function for literally tens of thousands of years. Like the oldest mythological trope, as far as we can tell, is that of the mother goddess, the idea that the earth is the mother, the world is the mother, the universe is the mother. When you're 4, the mother is the universe, right? I mean, the mother is everything, and you very slowly go through the shift of consciousness where you start to see yourself as being existentially independent from the mother, and start to see the mother as being, vulnerable and mortal and all the rest of it. And so I think like that old spiritual trope of the mother goddess was like, it was trying to answer this need for human beings to kind of like find that experience of being supported and being loved and belonging here from some other source, right? But nowadays we live in these kind of late times. We live in a time when very, very few of us identify with some kind of spiritual tradition that we inherited, right? Like when I ask, if I have a group of yoga students, I will sometimes, if I want to make this point, I'll just ask them, how many of your parents identified as being Christian? And usually if it's a group of like European students or American students, you get like 80–90% of them raising their hands. They say, how many of you identify as being Christian? And like, usually there's like one person kind of like struggling to get their hand up, but they're not really sure. They kind of want to, but right. So we like
yeah.
don't really have, and because, and that's, characteristic of the kind of people who come to yoga, who are looking for something. Like you want spirituality, you want spiritual connection, but you can't, it's like we lost the language in which to even describe what it is that we are actually missing and what it is that we want to find. Because so many of us are uncomfortable saying, I want to find God, or something like that. Whereas 100 years ago, that's what one would say, right? But nowadays, it's sort of like, or at least, 300 years ago, but nowadays it's more fraught, it's difficult. It's like but there's this my point is there's this basic human need for feeling feeling and knowing in a deep visceral way that you are loved unconditionally, not just by another person who wants something from you, but by the source of life itself. And that's why you belong here. Because something that's shaping everything from within, something that's responsible for everything being here that is here, wants you here. And so you're here. And so your belonging is, indubitable. It can't be, you can't be crossed off the list. You most definitely, belong, right? But I think that there's a sorrow, and that's the blackness. The sorrow is the sense that I don't belong, or my doubt about my worthiness, and I recoil from that. And when I recoil from that, I become a conformist. I live my life trying to prove that I belong here by getting followers on Instagram, or getting an amazing job, or making a lot of money, or having beautiful people around me, or knowing more than everybody else around me, or whatever it is. I go trying to earn my worth and earn my sense of belonging, but then I never really believe it myself, because I feel that there's something empty about it. But unless I'm willing to turn back toward that sorrow and not recoil from it, there's no chance, right? So I have to be able to feel into my sadness, and to feel into my sense of unworthiness and my sense that I don't belong, without recoiling from it, before anything can happen, whatever, right? And I take it that like, for example, the story about Shiva as the poison drinker, Shiva drinking the hala hala, right? Neutralizing the poison. It's like this infinitely compassionate, loving awareness that's able to hold this blackness without recoiling from it, and even take it in and savor it, experiences it as being impossibly sweet in a way that is incomprehensible from the perspective of the ego, right? Or you think of the Buddha under the Bodhi tree, but before his enlightenment, being visited by fear and desire. They come and sort of stalk him, and he doesn't say, go away, or, try to chop their heads off. Just like, look, I'm not going to fall for it this time, but come sit with me, right? So that darkness, that sorrow, it's like in other words, there's this idea from spiritual traditions and from the yoga tradition that the way in is to stop recoiling from sorrow and to be with it, right? To hold it, to know that it is being held by a loving consciousness, and you don't have to recoil from it. And so, that I'm sort of taken by the way that the Black Lotus flower itself draws the blackness of the mud in which it's rooted up, and spreads it out on its petals, and holds that blackness up to the light, and then it shines and reflects every color inside of it in the way that it shines, as kind of David was saying. So instead of trying to transcend all of that, it embraces it and feels into it, and it becomes part of its beauty. So that relationship to blackness, that relationship to, which is of course in Buddhist teachings also the ground of genuine compassion, right? Is being in touch with human sorrow and suffering. So that seems like a profoundly important dimension, and an often overlooked one of yoga, and that's kind of what the Black Lotus symbol represents for me.
I love that, because I think it also really emphasizes that there's no escape. We often come to the yoga practice, I think, as practitioners, as you're saying, to heal these wounds, these feelings of unworthiness, these deep sorrows, this feeling of not belonging. We enter in, and there is a sense of liberation. I think that's what attracts us all and addicts us all to the practice itself is you're relieved from that sorrow for a time, but we can then kind of forget that actually that's just acting like a Band-Aid. It's not actually healing the wounding. It's not actually transforming us totally. Because as you say, you have to go into the shadow and into the wounding and into that darkness and be with it. And just
Totally.
say, yes, come sit. Let's be together.
And it
And
seems
then
to me that, and it seems not, I
yeah.
didn't mean to interrupt you, but it seems to me
Yeah.
that whether you're sitting still or doing your deep, vigorous asana practice, you can be feeling into that rather deeply and intensely, or not.
Yeah.
You know, or not.
It's true. It's true.
You
Well,
know, and
also,
even if you're
Yeah.
sitting still, it can be just be,
Yeah.
you know, I focus
Totally.
on my mantra and I kind of make myself numb and I don't move. I refuse to feel my
Yeah.
body. You know, meditation could be just as, or that kind of sitting
100%.
practice can be just as numbing.
Yeah, the
hey
spiritual
guys,
bypassing can happen at through
In
any
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 in any asana.
yeah, any position,
it's
any practice.
see, and I love the Yoga Sutra, um, the Tato Dvandva Anabhigataha, because the way that it puts it, it's very strategic. Because the word is abhigata, and that means to ward off, to reject, to chase away, to fight, to kill, and so and that's opposites. To kill, to ward off, to do all. That's exactly what we do, right? We
Right.
fight. We try to push all that away, but anabhigataha is to stop doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a really profound way of putting it, because by putting it in the negative that way, it's saying, no, you're warding off these. We're avoiding the shadow, um, and to do yoga is to stop that, and to let it in, and um, and see what with it mixing and what emerges, right? Like, and but that is so, it's very challenging, right? Because just because, like, Peg, I'm sorry, I don't know how long we're gonna stay on here. We're way over, but you asked about like sort of obstacles in this walking an unconventional path, you know? And and I thought about that, you know, and it's funny, Ty remembered the idea that like you have to be a maverick, you have to, because I really have done that. I've really gone off on my own, you know, and I don't know. It's like there's a certain the one obstacle is loneliness, and a certain darkness that is like I never anticipated, honestly, because it's weird how like when you're younger, or as me when I was younger, I didn't really think about loneliness. It's happened more, you know, like, and I don't know. It's just interesting that um, that like this whole manifestation thing that's so obsessed with light and abundance, and it really is in a way like certainly kind of shutting off that darkness, or certainly not talking about it in the like in a conversation like we are, and partly though it's because that darkness, like, it can be so overpowering, can be so strong, you know, and so it's, I don't know, I'm not even sure my point, but I know that there's challenge, like it's not an easy thing to go to, like there's a lot of variables in, it's not just a matter of like going in there and facing your shadow and coming through and you're good, like I mean it can be heavy duty, you know, and quite powerful, the, you know, and so it's And I guess in some ways I wish that I like, and I don't know, I brought some of the loneliness or the solitude on myself in my choices, you know? And, and I don't know, it's interesting how the Orson Welles, I love, there's an interview with him when he says, says the thing that people don't say, right? You know, like this interview says, do you have any regrets? And, you know, most people go, I don't regret anything. And he's like, pretty much everything. Like, yeah, he goes, if I could go back and do it all again, I would do it all different, you know? And I don't know, sometimes I feel like that. I feel like, man, there's a lot of mistakes I left behind there. And that I don't know, that I'm experiencing some of those, you know, like a play out. And of course you can walk a new path and learn and grow and stuff. But that darkness can be real challenging for sure.
I really appreciate you sharing that, because I certainly have felt the loneliness. And, you know, last year was a particularly difficult time for a lot of different reasons. And, you know, being alone was what I kind of needed. And certainly there's a lot of depth in that, and kind of sitting with that and being with that. But also it is really lonely, and the rest of the world doesn't like to talk about it. It doesn't make for good conversation. And so it makes you alone with it. Like, it's not like just that, it's not just solitude, but sometimes you just feel like you have to be alone with it. And those kind of real things aren't often said. So I just really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's also, though, why it's so important to have teachers and to have friendships and to have community. And I mean, as a teacher, I think it's very common to feel alone, because, you know, you have your students, but you're not, you know, if you're a good teacher, you're not using your students as like a, you know, psychology forum or therapy session, right? So there's a separation there, like by design. And so you are kind of alone, but I think that's why it's so essential to have, you know, people in conversation like this, or people that you trust that are not your students, that you can reach out to, that are coaches, that are mentors, that are, you know, therapists, if that's what you need. But that those, you know, those relationships are so essential. And it's also where yoga is happening, because yoga happens in relationship. It doesn't, you know, we need that.
It's like, I'm sorry, I'm almost getting teary, because I'm never included in these types of things, but here I am, you know. It feels good. It's like, you know, I really, and I also appreciate Ty inviting me into his class once too. I always appreciate that. Thank you, Ty.
Was it a Black Lotus class?
No, this was like a philosophy class a while back that I was doing online. Yeah, that was an awesome session.
So, but and it's like, it's interesting, because it's a real challenge for me, that networking and connecting, and like I really am like this yogi in a cave over there, and as part of how I want to grow is to make more connections like you're talking about, Harmony, and so it's a good timing that you've invited me onto this, Peg. Yeah, appreciate it.
When I thought of these conversations, this was what I envisioned. This right here, the three of you. This was beautiful. I would keep going if I could. I mean, I would keep going, and I feel like we could. I just appreciate all three of you coming on and spending this time and sharing yourself and sharing, you know, all that you did. It was just, this was beautiful. Thank you.
Pleasure. Yeah, honored.
Always a pleasure to connect with Ty and David and yourself.
God, I feel the same way. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ashtanga Dispatch podcast. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. And if you wouldn't mind, maybe give it a share over social media, send it to your friends, or even just drop me a message and let me know what you thought. I love getting your emails and messages. They really, really do mean a lot. And I read every single one. So thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for listening. And I hope to hear from you or see you somewhere soon.